Dishonored 2 is very odd. Playing through it initially, I didn't enjoy it very much and thought it was a subpar successor to the Dishonored name. But on my second playthrough, something clicked and everything just started to work. I started seeing the beauty behind this game as I took my time to carefully make my way through each map, hunting down every single rune and bone charm I could get my hands on. Dishonored 2 is very much a game that takes time to appreciate, and I'm glad I played through this game more than once, or else I'd be sitting here spouting off about how much of a letdown this game was. One of the things I appreciated the most playing through this game was the map design. Dishonored has always been known as a series where you can approach a mission from many different angles, and Dishonored 2 holds true to this tradition. I played through this game 3 times, and even on my third time through a map, I was finding new entrances to the mission, or another little nook that offers an alternate route. It's also impressive how Arcane was able to incorporate an overarching idea for each of the levels too. With the Asylum you deal a lot with verticality, with the whole level being designed around a large central pillar. Then you also have levels like the Clockwork Mansion and Stilton's Manor, which offer up pretty huge mechanical changes that completely alter how you would normally work your way through a standard level. The map design in Dishonored 2 is definitely a step up from the previous entry, and was easily one of the most enjoyable aspects of this game. Another thing I noticed about this game was its painstaking attention to detail. Every playthrough I noticed something new that the devs snuck into each level. One of my favorites being a particular event in the Stilton Manor that I just cannot spoil for anyone who hasn't seen it. The game is filled with these little moments though, small events that just make you feel like the world is alive and breathing. These also take shape in the chaos system that's carried over from the previous entry. Now, if you're not familiar with the chaos system, I'll get you up to speed real quick. Basically, the world has two states in Dishonored games, high chaos and low chaos. High chaos leads to a more rundown world with more enemies and bad stuff happening everywhere, while low chaos is the exact opposite, where they're still able to live their day-to-day life and the world is mostly unchanged from its normal state. So anyways, getting back to my original point, the chaos system also shows off Arcane's knack for putting in these little moments for the player to appreciate. One of my favorites being the matron in the asylum. In both runs, she ends up being fired from her job. But depending on your chaos, she'll either be missing from the asylum, presumably heading back to the mainland to continue her life, or she'll be hanging from the ceiling. Stumbling upon these two different scenes in my high chaos and low chaos run was awesome. Seeing the world change due to my actions right in front of my eyes made me appreciate this game so much more. And of course the game is littered with these moments. Every stage you'll be experiencing some sort of different outcome due to your actions, and every single time it will put a smile on your face. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up how goddamn beautiful this game is. Dishonored has a style that just cannot be emulated, and the talented designers over at Arcane did a fantastic job upholding this with Dishonored 2. Karnaca very much feels entirely separate from Dunwall in its design. Karnaca is a run-down, beaten-up city that the nation has forgotten about, and it shows. Beggars around every corner, an entire apartment complex is lost to bloodflies. Basically, Karnaca is a beautiful mess. Dishonored 2 also boasts some pretty impressive technical beauty as well. Textures in this game are extremely crisp and unnaturally high resolution. I was surprised with how many times I walked up to a tiny postcard and was able to read exactly what was on it, without seeing one jagged edge. There is also some utilization of dynamic lighting, which, while not paramount to how this game looks, was deserving of some recognition. Seriously, look how cool this is, it's like I'm playing Fear over here. Dishonored 2 is a gorgeous game, and upholds that classic Dishonored style even better than the first game. I guess I should also talk about the gameplay too, huh? You know, this being a video game and all. No, but jokes aside, the gameplay in Dishonored 2 hasn't really changed much from the original game. The biggest change is the introduction of another playable character in Emily Caldwin. Emily plays slightly differently from Corvo due to her powers. Instead of Blink, she has Far Reach, which carries her momentum instead of just teleporting her to a spot. Far Reach also lets you grab enemies from afar and reel them into you for some real goofy antics. She also has Domino, which lets you link up a bunch of enemies with the Domino effect, which applies status effects to every linked person. So, if you domino 3 people and you knock one out, they all get knocked out. Even with these different powers, you're still just playing a slightly different version of the same game. I personally would have preferred to see a larger mix-up of the mechanics, instead of getting a slightly different character to play around with. Now, Dishonored 2 launched with a lot of problems, most notably its performance issues. When I purchased Dishonored 2 about a week back, the game ran like hot garbage. Constant hitching, never running above 50 FPS, odd VSync glitches, and an unresponsive mouse to top it all off. Since then, it has been fixed for me, but many people still suffer from performance issues, and Arcane is still struggling to get the PC release up to standards. Hopefully they rectify it soon, because the performance issues for me were seriously terrible, and they have not been fixed across the board. So I cannot with any certainty say that if you pick this game up that it will run well for you. Dishonored 2 has some real bad writing as well. Some of the lines were borderline comical in the sheer irony. One example being the Empress of the Isles lecturing the antagonist about how a ruler shouldn't be decided by their lineage, but instead what they do for their people. Meanwhile, Karnaca is an absolute mess, and Emily was happy to turn a blind eye to it the entire time. The funny thing is, this is acknowledged by the same character. Emily is well aware of her incredible hypocrisy when lecturing anyone else about their inability to rule. Yet, a couple of hours later, she gets up on her high horse and starts talking down to everyone. Because I guess we need to feel triumphant by this point? I don't know. The plot is also just all over the place. The Crown Killer is built up to be some huge menace to your role, and yet that's dealt with almost immediately in a very unsatisfying manner, and then never addressed again. Delilah at some point also amassed a witch army strong enough to overthrow the capital, which you're never made aware of until halfway through the game. Delilah, by the way, just seems like they needed a reason for Corvo to put the mask on again. She comes out of nowhere and immediately usurps the throne with almost no resistance. Honestly, the only well-written character was the Outsider, and that's only because he had the wherewithal to look at everything happening around him and call it out for being as stupid as it is. These were the only glaring flaws I was able to notice while playing Dishonored 2. The poor performance and the messy writing detracted from my enjoyment of the game, but the solid, albeit a little bit stale gameplay, the gorgeous graphics, and the incredible attention to detail still kept my enjoyment up most of the ways through. Overall, Dishonored 2 is a 4 out of 5. While it may be flawed in some aspects, it's still a very solid entry into the Dishonored series, and you're likely to get a lot of enjoyment and playtime out of this game.